So, it's been a while since we've actually talked about hockey on this channel. That's because hockey really hasn't been a thing. I could sit here and talk about signings or like, oh, well, they might be doing this or this could happen. There was really no point, for me at least, to make videos speculating about what might have happened. It was better to wait until now when we know exactly what is happening. And thus, here we are, which, speaking of which, to signings and everything like that, I didn't want to talk about signings because it just made me sad. Because to be completely honest with you, I was 100% on the side of canceling the season. I didn't think the NHL could pull this off, even to the extent that they have already. Yet now, here we are. It is nearly August. What the hell has this year been? It's nearly August, and we are getting ready for the Stanley Cup playoff play-in to begin this weekend, as insane as that absolutely is. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things that were on my mind in relation to the NHL, to hockey in general, that I haven't really gotten a chance to talk about yet, at least in video form. Obviously, like Twitter, Twitch, whatever, we've talked about it there. And first and foremost, I do want to start off by saying, of course, we had games last night, the first few games. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, I got to see a decent amount of. The winning goal from Scott Laughton was sick. Toronto, Montreal was fairly entertaining as well. Yes, it scares me that Ilya Mikheyev's back because, Jesus Christ, he looks great for the Leafs. Didn't see much of Edmonton, Calgary, but I know I saw Connor McDavid's, 2 goals, I think it was. He's freak and a half still. But as I mentioned, I didn't think they'd be able to pull this off. And one of the big things for me about this is that I wasn't sure how the presentation would be. That was the big thing for me, and in fairness, that's more of a mock-up, but this, of course, is one of the better images here. I wasn't sure how the presentation would be, how it would come off, because for me, when you have a spectator sport and you take away the spectators, it takes a lot away from the moment, which is why I was on the side of just saying, hey, cancel the season. The Bruins were amazing this year. Just cancel the season. It's fine. It is what it is, because I can't help but think back to great moments. And screw it. Takes place in Scotiabank Arena, at least for Eastern Conference teams. I think back to Bruins Leafs, the Bruins comeback, in 2013. Say that happened with nobody there. It takes a lot away from the moment. And being an MMA fan and seeing some of the stuff that's gone on with the UFC continuing, whether or not they should have or not, different conversation, but seeing some of the stuff that's gone on within the UFC and just being like, man, that would have been that much better of a moment with a crowd reaction. Same thing as a wrestling fan. In fairness, I don't really pay attention to the WWE side of things, but like WrestleMania was a great example, one of the first big events to take place really once everyone started getting serious about the pandemic, which was 4 months too late. But looking as well as being like an AEW fan, where it's like, oh, number one, I would have gone to a show in Boston in April. That was rescheduled for August. It's been postponed again. It's going to take place April 2021, I hope. But point being, there's been stuff there where that's a spectator sport. It's a spectator, type of entertainment. And there have been so many moments that have happened now in the past few months where you look and it's like, that was awesome. It would have been pushed up another couple of notches had there been the audience there to react. However, seeing what they've done with this, and after seeing the first 3 games yesterday, I have a little bit more optimism than I did. I have to admit, they've pulled it off incredibly well. It has the feeling of an outdoor game, where because of the crowd sound that they're using, it just almost feels like, oh, they're in a football stadium. They have the stuff around like the Winter Classic or the Stadium Series. The fans are just back there. It's fine. It has a better feeling than I thought. Now, still a part of me is always going to have that feeling of maybe just have canceled the season. We would have had the draft in June. Almost a month ago now would have been free agency. And, we'd sit here through August not giving a shit. And then September and October, we'd start getting excited about hockey again. But now that it's here, and I knew this was going to happen, I'm certainly more on the side of being excited to see how this plays out. There's always going to be something that just feels a little bit off. If you have a team that does extremely well, or, there's a great story to it, and there's not kind of that fan base there to ever react to it, it's going to kind of suck. But We'll get into that in a little bit because I do want to talk about the playoffs a little bit later on in this video. But I guess to sum up this initial kind of part of this video, so far so good. From the first 3 exhibition games, the initial impression of what is going on in terms of how they've set this up and how they're managing to do it, thumbs up. I mean, fair play. I think the NHL and the NBA waiting like they did, they clearly learned from those companies like the UFC, like AEW, like WWE, that have, progressed and just have that leadership that's saying, fuck no, we're just going through this, even if that's not the smartest thing to do. I think you were able to sit there and look and study and then take the positives out of the situation, get rid of the negatives. Major League Baseball didn't exactly do that. Shout out to the Miami Marlins. I hope all of you end up being okay, despite the fact that that league... People have asked me, side tangent here, it's surprising, I know I do that a lot. When it comes to Major League Baseball, people are like, do you care this season? No, I don't. Man, the Red Sox are kind of trash so far this season. Yeah, they are. I don't care. Call me a fair weather fan if you want, but my biggest gripe with baseball right now isn't that the Red Sox aren't exactly going to be contenders right now, or potentially anytime soon. I've seen them win numerous times already. I cannot complain. I've told that story plenty of times. My grandfather lived his entire life. Diehard Sox fan. Never saw them win. I've seen them win 4 times. They could suck for the rest of my life. I'm never going to bitch and complain about that. But baseball is a joke. It was bad enough with the whole Houston controversy. And say what you want, how guilty were the Red Sox, the Yankees, in terms of a cheating scandal. You let the Astros off the hook. Rob Manfred then calls the World Series, the Commissioner's Trophy, a piece of tin. And then you have this, where they're starting up the season. It's a complete shit show. At least the NHL and the NBA are doing it right. So I give them fair credit for that. One of the things that I missed last week, and I can't believe I missed this, I never got a chance to make a video on it, the Seattle Kraken are a thing. And what a beautiful thing they are. Now, there are some things to talk about here. First and foremost, in terms of the logos, the look, the color scheme, I'm good with it. Very much good with it. I think the logo itself, tremendous. It's simple. Obviously, the anchor logo, with the needle is fantastic as well. And one of the other things I like, number one, the arena as well, or secondly, the arena looks sick. I love the jerseys, both the home and away. Now, I get it. There are examples like this where a lot of people have done mock-ups. Is it going to take me to bar down? Yeah, it is. And I've seen this article before. I wanted to make sure it was Z89 on Instagram. There have been a lot of mock-ups like these that do look sick. I'll agree. They look sick, especially that Metropolitans throwback. Shout out to Bar Down, by the way. But the logo, the jerseys themselves, and as it's been, released so far, I mean, it's well known. I'm a jersey collector at this point. I'm going for 31 out of 31 teams, and eventually it'll be 32 out of 32, and I plan on getting a home and away, much like I did for the Vegas Golden Knights for Seattle. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and say what you want. Now, could the logo have been better? Maybe. I like it for what it is. Could the scheme have been slightly different? Sure. There was the mock-up going around of like, oh, here's what it would have looked like with green. I'm kind of okay with them not copying the Seattle Seahawks and going with the green. I don't think, really outside of Pittsburgh, I couldn't care less about matching color schemes. All 4 of the major teams, that being, of course, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, and Boston, all have different colors for the most part. I'm perfectly fine with that. So I'm cool with Seattle doing something different and going with the red. Really, this is why I wanted to wait until I had a little bit more to talk about, because I can't make a 15 to 20 minute video about like, hey, here's how awesome these jerseys are, because I think they're great. I do. I get some of the criticisms like, oh, well, the bottom of the jersey here should be dark blue like the sleeves are. I just enjoy them from what they, for what they are. I could sit here and, make some critiques too, like everyone else. I agree with a lot of the critiques, but really it's not, it's not worth it for me if I enjoy it for what it is. So as far as the name, I'm good with it. I didn't think they were going to go with the Kraken. My guess was they were actually going to go with the Sockeye. But I'm good with the name. PTI, I love that show, but I mean, Jesus Christ. Just, you want to talk about Hot Take Central, Michael Wilbon. You got that one wrong. I'm good with the name, good with the look, good with the jerseys, good with the arena. Can't wait for them to actually be a thing. But that does lead me to this. And it's something that's been discussed now a lot because the word is, that's not as big of an image as I thought. The word is that when Seattle is added to the league, they are going to move the Arizona Coyotes to the Central Division, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. I'll tell you why. Simple answer here for me is to just expand the amount of divisions. Instead of 2 conferences, 2 divisions each, just go with 4 divisions. It makes sense, and I'll show you how. Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, and Seattle. You have the Northwest Division. Down here, of course, in California, you have the 3 California teams and the Vegas Golden Knights. You have the Southwest Division. This is the one division that's a little bit tied up, I'll give you that. But you can have Colorado, Arizona, Dallas, and Winnipeg in a division, and then have Minnesota, Chicago, St. Louis, Nashville. If you want to trade out Minnesota and put them in this division with Winnipeg, Colorado, Arizona, fine. And if you want to have Dallas in that division, but I identify Dallas being as more of a kind of rival with Colorado than any of those other teams. So, again, Arizona, Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, and then the 4th division you have the Minnesota Wild, Chicago Blackhawks, St. Louis Blues, and Nashville Predators. Pretty straightforward. For the East, I mean, they've always done weird stuff, right? Like Tampa and Florida have always been kind of in the Atlantic Division, as weird as that is. So I understand if you look at this Atlantic Division here and say, oh, well, we don't really want to break up many of these teams. My argument, though, is, I mean, it's not that difficult to just kind of change it up. Boston, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto in the same division. Then you have Buffalo. I mean, I get if you don't want to separate Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, right? But it's not that difficult to just say, okay, these 4 teams. Hell, if you wanted to, you go Minnesota, Detroit, St. Louis, and Chicago. You move Detroit back to the Western Conference, put Nashville in the East. Sure, there's not that big of a difference there. I know Detroit complained to get out of the Western Conference, but point being here, are you going to break up some rivalries in a division sense? Sure, but they're still going to be in the same conference. They can still play a lot, and they can still meet up in the playoffs. Especially, too, if you drop the absurd, playoff setup that we have right now, top 3, 2 wildcard teams. Just make it 1 through 8, as it should be, NBA style. Have it be based off of wins and losses. Drop the bullshit pity point, and then you're good to go. 4 divisions per the 2 conference. Top 8 teams make it if you want to make it so that the division title winners are automatically seeded 1 through 4, and then you have the best of the rest in order. Sure, that's how they used to do it. So I think one year, you had, I think it was Atlanta in the Southeast Division who were up in the playoff, standings. I think they were 3rd, and there was a team in 4th that was significantly better. But if you still want to do it that way, it's better than what we have now. But regardless of what combination you do, because, I mean, you're going to break up some rivalries in terms of not having them in the same division. I mean, for example, Islanders, Rangers, Devils, then you probably put the Flyers there. Hell, you could put the Bruins there if you wanted to. And then that way, I mean, hell, you could go Carolina, Washington with the Florida teams. Plenty of different options. But point being, instead of just cramming everybody into 2 divisions, I mean, you can if you want to. But it doesn't really make a ton of sense to me to just be like, no, we need 2 divisions. It's fine. I don't know. It's just weird to me. That's all I can say. So that little tangent aside, I mentioned as well that I want to talk about the playoffs, which brings me to this video that I released on October 1st of 2019. Shout out to a Steve Dangle trade tree. I already watched it. Perfect. This video here. This was the bracket that I had, that I predicted we were going to see heading into this season. I want to take a look at this because if you look here, I mean, in terms of teams that I really got off the mark, I mean, obviously San Jose, just a disaster of a season. But when you look at, the NHL standings and what they were, I don't know if that's actually still available. Oh, good, it is. But if you look at, the division standings here, I mean, overall, Nashville, Minnesota, I mean, even Minnesota was technically still in it. Right now it's going off of point percentage, but even Minnesota, Chicago, still in it at that point in terms of the wild card hunt. Chicago probably a little bit too far out of reach, but for the most part here, I'd say the worst team I had was San Jose, which was a shock, I think, to everybody. But The main thing to note, of course, is that I predicted the Bruins to be crown champions this year, which I will say, not a horrible guess. Not a horrible guess whatsoever. Top team in the league at the end of the season when it was called. So what I wanted to do is I kind of just wanted to look back at this and just be like, oh, was there anything that we kind of like crazily got wrong? And, you know, I mean, aside from, you know, one California team making it when it turned out, you know, the California teams were hot garbage this year, we weren't totally off the mark, which is shocking, I know. Yeah, even in the West, I mean, you know, I said Arizona wouldn't make the playoffs and that Chicago would. I mean, they were incredibly close there. So I was very intrigued to look back at that because I can't really look back at that now and be like, well, here's what I thought it would be and here's what it actually is, because the whole situation's been turned upside down, because this is what we're looking at right now, as insane as this is. And unfortunately, I can't totally fill out a bracket right now because there's no way to know. I mean, I can make an assumption based off of conference, as I mean, Boston is going to play Philadelphia. So, I mean, if I guess in a way I could fill out the bracket, right? Like, I think Boston will beat Philadelphia and potentially earn that number one seed. I mean, then again, I guess it'd be Boston beating Philadelphia, Tampa beating Washington, which I guess means Washington would be the 3 seed. I guess I could try to half-ass my way through this if I wanted to. All I was going to do is make the prediction for the first round. But then, at the end of the first round, you know, heading into the second round, it gets reseeded again. So, it is kind of a lot to keep track of. But in terms of who I think's going to win out, I mean, it's kind of a tough call. I mean, you look at the play-in rounds, Toronto and Columbus. I do think Toronto's going to win out. Columbus could easily win that, though. It's going to be a very good matchup, but I would go with Toronto on that front. After seeing Carey Price in that exhibition game, I'm going with Pittsburgh. Islanders and Panthers, complete toss-up to me. I'm going to side with Florida, although both those two teams are starving for playoff success. And then Carolina and New York, I'm going to side with Carolina, but I genuinely do believe that the New York Rangers could make it as well. So, despite the fact that it's very, you know, completely, you know, new setup here, you know, out of, you know, circumstantial side of things, the matchups are just crazy. Calgary and Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg can beat Calgary, especially if Calgary plays like they did in that exhibition game. You know, if Connor Hellebuyck can play like he did when the season was ending. Whew. So I'd probably go, if we look at the Eastern Conference here, I think we have Boston and Toronto. And I'm going Boston over Toronto. 4th seed, we would have the Battle of Pennsylvania. And I gotta be honest, I think I'd side with Philly if they can keep up the momentum they had. And of course, they beat Pittsburgh yesterday. So I'd probably go with Boston and Philly advancing in round 1. Then we would have Tampa and Florida. I'd obviously side with Tampa. And then I think we'd have Washington, Carolina. I think Washington would gain revenge. So honestly, I know I just went with the 4 top teams still moving on, but I think that would be the case, which means we would end up, I do believe, with a rematch of this little mini play-in tournament. And I think it comes down to Boston and Tampa in the conference final. Which I had Boston and Philly under different circumstances, but I still think the Bruins are making it to the Stanley Cup final from the Eastern Conference. I can't help but have faith in my team, especially if they can play like they did in the regular season. On the Western side of things, you know, I think Winnipeg, well, starting off with this tournament here, I guess I think I'd still have St. Louis beating Dallas, but man, that playoff series last year, thanks a lot, Dallas, by the way, for blowing that. St. Louis wouldn't have won the cup if you didn't blow it. But I'd probably still see St. Louis beating Dallas. I'm going to go Vegas over Colorado and Vegas over St. Louis. So that would be Vegas as the number 1 seed taking on Winnipeg. I'd have Vegas winning that. We would have St. Louis against the winner of Vancouver and Minnesota, which I would go St. Louis over Vancouver. From that side, we have, what would it be then? What would it be? It would be Colorado against the winner of Nashville and Arizona, which I'd have Nashville moving on. And I predicted Nashville would make it to the Stanley Cup final heading into the season. And honestly, I think Nashville could beat Colorado in that first round matchup. So we'd go with Nashville there. And then Dallas would play the winner of Edmonton and Chicago. Edmonton wins that, and I think Edmonton beats Dallas. So if I'm not mistaken here, it would be Vegas as the top seed, Edmonton in the 5 spot. You would have St. Louis in the 2 spot and Nashville in the 6 spot. So, God, what the hell would that even be? It would be, Jesus, what would that even be? I should have put more prep time into this. I didn't plan on doing this. I was just going to make the first round predictions, but off the cuff, again, Vegas is the number 1 seed. I think they'd be taking on Nashville. I think it'd be Vegas and Nashville, and then St. Louis as the 2 seed against Edmonton, if I'm not mistaken. So if we have Vegas against Nashville, I'd go with Vegas at that point, and then St. Louis and Edmonton, I'd go Edmonton. I think they'll have a little bit more gas in the tank. So a conference final of Vegas and Edmonton. I think Vegas is the better team. Honestly, at this point, I'm going a Boston-Vegas Cup final. I'm siding with the Bruins. I think they're going to win the whole damn thing. But the point remains. Am I damn well excited to have hockey back at this point? Yeah, a lot more than I thought I was going to be. And I think at this point, too, we're all just happy to be like, oh, thank God. There's hockey. Let's focus on something that ultimately doesn't matter, just to get a goddamn rest. With that, I'll leave you here for this one. This ranting and rambling video is over because I am sweating to death. You're lucky I love you to turn off that air conditioner for long enough, especially wearing a jersey too. I will see you all soon in other videos. We'll be talking hockey again once more because Lord knows I missed it. Postseason hockey is happening. It's weird.